Hi, I'm Oliver Cowmeadow, principal of the International Macrobiotic School. What I want to talk to you about in this video is how do we know if we're healthy? I've really been stimulated to make this, listening to the news over the last few days with the coronavirus spreading and a lot of people in hospital in the UK. We're over 30,000 people in hospital. And the doctors keep saying that they some people are in hospital, and it's not surprising because they have comorbidities, they have illnesses which mean they're much more likely to get serious symptoms from COVID-19, such as lung problems, type 2 diabetes, heart problems, and people who are obese. But there are other people who don't have any health problems getting serious or life-threatening symptoms, and also increasing numbers of younger people in their 30s and 40s getting it. And so they're saying that it's a real mystery. Why are these people who are apparently healthy getting serious or life-threatening symptoms or dying? The reason that they're saying this is because the current main Western medical way of defining if people are healthy is that they don't have any diseases or recognizable illnesses. People don't have arthritis and Crohn's and blah blah blah. And if people don't have named illnesses, then they're considered to be healthy. This is such an amazingly simplistic and crude definition of health. It never ceases to amaze me how amazing Western science understands some things, and how fantastic Western medicine is in healing a whole variety of different problems, and yet how ignorant that whole system is in understanding health, and also how we can heal from many different problems or prevent many different problems through our daily diet and lifestyle. And this is a very good example. So one of the knock-on effects of not being able to recognize people's level of health is that just about everybody is in fear that they may develop coronavirus symptoms really seriously, or may even die from it, because people have no way of knowing, are they more susceptible or less susceptible if they don't have any of the kind of comorbidities, the illnesses which are recognized as increasing your chances of getting serious symptoms. So it creates a lot of fear. Really, if we can know much better what our level of health is, this can, and if we can use macrobiotics, Chinese medicine, other understandings to really improve and strengthen our health and strengthen our immune system, we can really reduce the amount of fear that we're in at times like this, when there's a pandemic going around. How do we know if we're healthy? So for me, this has been one of the biggest gifts that I've learned through macrobiotics from Oriental medicine, is that there's a whole series, there's a whole number of methods of what you could call Oriental diagnosis or Oriental health assessment, ways that we can all learn in order to understand more what is happening with our internal health. So I'm going to just very briefly describe these to you. There's a number of different ways. They're not kind of highly accurate. They're not like a blood test. They're not like a blood marker test. They're a little bit more general. So when we teach this Oriental diagnosis on all our longer courses, which I'll describe a bit later, because they're just so useful to learn. They're methods that everybody can learn, but it's good to learn a number of methods, because then we become more accurate. I'm going to describe some different methods. If we can use half a dozen or 10 different methods, and something is showing up in all, a lot of those different methods, then that gives us a clearer idea that really there is an imbalance or a problem developing in a certain organ or a certain part of the body. So these methods of Oriental health assessment. Traditionally, they're grouped into 4 different kinds. Visual methods, looking at the body, looking at the face, the tongue, the eyes, the hands, etc. Touch diagnosis, acupuncturists touch the pulses. That's quite a complex thing to do, but we can also touch, we can palpate, we can push into our internal organs. We can use different areas on the back to assess what's happened to the organs in the front. In Oriental medicine, we can feel the meridians. Here's the lung meridian. If we're getting, we can feel the lung meridian to see if there are abnormalities along that, which could indicate an imbalance in the lungs. We could also use specific points along the lung meridian to assess the condition of the lungs, for example. So various methods of touch diagnosis. Then there's voice diagnosis. Really what happened in the Orient over thousands of years is just amazingly perceptive observations about things that you can see on the outside that reveals things happening on the inside. So voice diagnosis. We all have our own voice, but the tone and the pitch of our voice can really vary according to which imbalances we have in the body. So our voices can subtly change if we have more of a liver imbalance, more of a lung imbalance, heart imbalance, etc. Also, another branch is smell diagnosis. Again, we all have our own smell, which hopefully in Oriental medicine, they say if we're in good health, we naturally have a slightly sweet, pleasant smell, but we can develop different body odors according to which organs are most imbalanced. More cheesy, more burnt smell, a more scorched smell, of an excessively sweet smell, a more oily smell, etc., indicating imbalance in different organs. Then there's the fourth one is questioning diagnosis. So we can ask people, how do you feel at different times of day? How's your sleep? How are your energy levels? How are your bowel movements? How is your urination? How are you feeling emotionally, etc., to get information about people's own experience of their health. So there are these 4 different, and then we can use understandings such as 5 elements, yin yang, understanding organ functions, etc., from an Oriental medicine point of view, to really piece together what are the main imbalances going on in ourselves or in somebody else. And this really can give us a good assessment of our health. So what I want to do is run through and give you a little bit more kind of concrete understanding of this. So if we come back to visual methods of diagnosis, very useful is to look at the face. Different areas of the face relate to different organs in the body. So, for example, the functioning of the kidneys shows up particularly around the eyes. I think because the skin here is soft, and the kidneys are controlling our kind of water and salt mineral balance in the body. And if there are changes in kidney function, then this area can become more baggy. You can see on me, just a little bit baggy under here. I've been drinking too much fluid, maybe. A little bit too much alcohol over Christmas, maybe, has had a minor effect on my kidneys. Some people, you'll see a lot of darkness around the eyes, extremely baggy or extremely sunken. This is indicating that they're in balance in the kidneys. So all the different organs have a different part of the face. Basically, if we're in good health, then our skin will have a fairly even face color, not too many lines, not too many spots. The more unhealthy we become internally, the more differences you'll see in the face. Some areas may be very dark, around the eyes, around the mouth, for example. Other areas may be very pale. There may be a lot of lines focused in different areas, like around the mouth or around the eyes or the forehead. So various signs we can read in the face, which tell us about the condition of different organs. Additionally, in the face, or actually the whole skin, again, we have our own basic skin color according to our parentage and what we were born with. But according to our health, our changes in our health, our skin color can change. It can become a little paler, a little redder, a little darker, a little more yellowish, and this is indicating imbalance in different organs. And the good thing about using a lot of this information on Oriental diagnosis is not only to spot where our imbalances are and possible potential future health problems, but also as we take steps to improve our health, then we can see things improving. We can see the darkness around the eyes lightening up and disappearing. We can see our skin color becoming more to a kind of healthy, fresh, glowing hue, etc. Then, so there's a few things looking at the face. Then we can look at the hands. Basically in Oriental medicine, they looked at everything, every part of the body. Everything external is, of course, reflecting what's happening internally. So we can look at the hands. We can look at the coloring on the hands. The coloring on my hands is fairly even, fairly similar to my facial color. Hands can become very red. This is indicating imbalances in the circulation and certain organs, also the lungs. The hands should just have a very slight moisture to them. They can become very dry or they can become very wet. Again, indicating imbalances in the internal health. Same with the feet. We can look at various features on the feet. In Chinese medicine, also looking at the tongue, and you can see changes in different areas of the tongue, the coating of the tongue, different colorations, which indicate imbalances in different organs. We can also look at people's posture. Again, we all have our own natural body shape, but we can be hunched, we can be one-sided, we can bend over in our lower back, in our upper back. We have different ways of walking. It's very fascinating to sit in a public place and see, if you watch people move, everybody walks in a different way. Why is that? Partly their constitutional body structure, but also they're revealing what is happening with our internal health. Very, very interesting study. So those are some methods of visual diagnosis, touch diagnosis. I actually described the meridians, the back areas, voice, smell, and questioning diagnosis. Questioning diagnosis, it's not only asking people about what aches, pains, health problems you have, it's also asking people for more subtle signs which can be revealing things about the health. So, for example, different organs have a stronger function at different times in the 24-hour cycle. So if people are getting a lot of problems at nighttime, for example, this is the time more of, in 5-element theory, the water energy, which is particularly governs or nourishes the kidneys and bladder. So if people are particularly getting minor signs during the night, such as having to get up and pee a lot during the night. Okay, there's an imbalance developing in the kind of kidney and or bladder. If people have a lot of problems sleeping, again, problems developing in the kidney and bladder. Maybe in Oriental medicine, the kidney energy is weak. It's not anchoring the energy downwards in the body. Then in Oriental medicine, they say our energy floats up, and then our mind is overactive and we don't feel the tiredness in the body. It's difficult to sleep. Sweating at night, any aches and pains that particularly come on at night, all indicating that there's an imbalance in kidney bladder. Tiredness, we can be generally tired, which is indicating that there's some kind of depletion going on in the body. But also we can get tired at different times of the day. If we really struggle first thing in the morning, that's when the liver and gallbladder energy should be flowing most strongly. So it indicates that energy is weak or is stuck. If we get particularly tired in the afternoon, often our blood sugar levels are dropping, and this is indicating that we particularly have an imbalance in the pancreas, spleen, and stomach organs, but particularly the pancreas. So these kind of subtle signs also are revealing what is happening with our internal health. If we have a lot, indicating imbalance in a particular organ, then that's significant. We need to start working on that particular organ. So this is a very quick overview of Oriental health assessment methods. So let's choose an example. Let's choose the lungs. I'm choosing this example because in Oriental medicine, the lungs are one very important part of the immune system with airborne viruses and bacteria. And during this pandemic, we want to have strong lungs right now. Not only do we want to have strong white blood cells and white blood cell immunity, but the first line of defense we have against any virus, cold viruses, flu viruses, and the COVID-19 virus is our lungs. And the stronger our lungs are, the better the health of our lungs, then the less likely the virus is to get into our body. We're going to be better defended. So some signs that we might want to check for our lungs which show a lung imbalance. As far as facial color goes, if the lungs are not functioning well, the skin tends to become pale, often with some pinkish color across the cheeks, and also the lips often become an exaggerated kind of bright pink or red color. So this is something one sees quite a lot. This is some of this Oriental diagnosis you can just spot with people, meters away, just walking down a street. You can see this particular coloration, and you know that there's a weakness in their lung energy. Exactly why you get these colorations, sometimes it's possible to understand from a Western scientific point of view. Sometimes I haven't figured it out yet. I'm sure there are scientific explanations, and it would be very interesting for Western science to really investigate these methods of Oriental health assessment and really incorporate them because they're so useful. Then the area of the face that relates to the lungs are the cheeks. 2 lungs, 2 cheeks, 2 kidneys, 2 eyes, 1 heart, 1 nose. This is indicated in the nose. Changes in the nose indicates various changes happening in the region of the heart. So lungs, if this area becomes very pink or dark or discolored or very puffy or very spotty, this is all indicating that the lungs are not in such good health. Then looking at the hands, as I described before, that if there's a lot of redness in the fingertips, in the whole fingers, or especially in the fingertips, and if the hand feels too moist or wet, this is indicating weakness in the lungs. And why is this? Because when we eat certain foods which weaken the lungs, in Oriental medicine, especially a lot of in macrobiotics, what we would call more yin foods, more expansive foods, such as sugary foods, an excess of fruit juices, tropical fruits, alcohol, excess of spices, processed foods, etc. These foods will tend to expand blood capillaries, which is why we can get some redness across here, and can produce this redness in the fingertips. We may also suffer from, you might call poor circulation, cold hands and feet. But a lot of redness here is also indicating that the lungs have been affected by these kind of foods. Excess moisture, we're eating too much liquids, which weaken the lungs. We can consume too much liquid. We consume too little and be dehydrated. We can also consume too much liquid. As we know, if you breathe on a piece of cold glass, water vapor comes out. The lungs are getting rid of excess fluids, and if there's too much fluid in the body, then the lungs can be overcome by having too much moisture in them. Lungs like dryness. This is why a lot of lung problems get better when people go to a warm, dry climate. And lungs don't like a very damp climate. However, if we're drinking a lot of fluids, which are creating a very damp climate inside the body, that will also be harming the lungs. And fluids which water has a more neutral effect, but a lot of fluids which people drink a lot of have a weakening effect on the lungs. coffee, black tea. Unfortunately, probably a lot of people depending on coffee to keep going at these times. Really not a good idea for your lungs. Fruit juices, especially tropical fruit juices, alcohol. Much better to drink water, herbal teas, grain coffees, things like Yano, barley cup, etc. As your main drinks, or Bovril, or something slightly salty, or something like that. So lots of things we can drink which are better for the lungs. Feet, similar kind of thing. If there's a lot of redness around the toes and between the toes, if there's a lot of damp skin, that's also indicating similar changes in the body which are going to be detrimental to the lungs. Then posture. If there's a real weakness in the lungs, then very often the shoulders come forwards, people's upper back, particularly in the region of the first 3 or 4 thoracic vertebrae, becomes much more curved forwards. And people develop this kind of posture. That's a sign of weakness here and in the lung energy. Takes time to form, but over time, if we get that kind of posture, it's indicating long-term imbalance or weakness in the lung energy. We can also touch that area, put our hands, not so easy on ourselves, on other people, over thoracic vertebrae 1, 2, 3, and see what it feels like there, if it feels particularly cold, or if you're able to feel ki, chi, prana. If it feels particularly empty there, that's indicating there's a lung imbalance. In questioning diagnosis, if people say that they frequently get colds and other infections, that's a sign of weakness in the lungs. If they frequently get flus, if they have any kind of breathing problems, any kind of, if in the past they've had any allergies like hay fever to airborne stuff, any kind of past asthma is indicating that there was a weakness here in the past that may still be there. Then on an emotional level, in Oriental medicine, they consider all of our internal organs not only have physical functions, but also energetic, emotional, mental, and even spiritual functions. And what they say is emotionally, if the lungs are not functioning well, then we tend to get depressed. We tend to look at everything negatively. I think this is probably because when the lungs are not functioning well, imagine the chest is collapsed and we start breathing very shallowly instead of taking deep breaths into our body. The body's not getting enough oxygen, the brain's not getting enough oxygen, and we lack energy, and we become emotionally depressed and mentally negative. We start thinking that everything is bad in the world. We're no good, nothing's any good, everything's going to come to a terrible end, etc. Very interesting that if we suffer from that, getting up and doing a bit of aerobic exercise, a few minutes skipping, trampolining, brisk walk, etc., swinging our arms, which stimulates the lung meridians, suddenly we can feel better. We think, well, why was I so depressed? Well, it's because the lungs weren't functioning well. So if we're suffering from that kind of depression and negativity a lot, another indication that the lungs are not functioning so well. So what I've done is kind of sketch out for one particular organ, the lung, various signs of it not functioning well. It may be that a person doesn't have any named illnesses, hay fever, asthma, bronchitis, etc. in the lungs, but there are a lot of these signs, showing that the lungs are weak. Well, then one is likely to be more susceptible to developing future problems in the lungs, and also to catching infections through the lungs, such as coronavirus, flu, colds, etc. So, very useful to have that Oriental diagnosis to know that our lungs are imbalanced, not in great health. But what do we do then? The great thing is that Oriental medicine then tells us, even when we don't have an illness, what we can do to strengthen our lungs. Oriental medicine is very good at understanding health. Western medicine is really focused on illness a great deal and can be very, very useful in dealing with illnesses at certain times. But Oriental medicine is really focused on health. So how do we improve the health of our lungs? Obviously, number one is breathing. Doing some deep breathing, brisk walking, exercising, yoga, tai chi, qigong, vacuuming the house, pushing the pushchair, going shopping, whatever it is. Deep aerobic breathing, learning to breathe with the abdomen as well as the chest, so we're breathing much more deeply, is going to be very good for the lungs. Dietary wise, I've run through some of the foods which are most weakening for the lungs. Really processed foods in general. The lungs and their organ pair in Oriental medicine, the organs are paired together because they have similar functions and they're affected by similar foods, etc. And the lungs are paired with the large intestine. These organs really like whole foods with fiber in. They're like whole grains, millet, rice, quinoa, buckwheat, etc. Whole vegetables, carrots and parsnips and swedes and things with the skin on, whole beans, whole seeds, etc. One of the biggest disasters for the lungs has been eating a lot of highly processed foods. You may also have seen in the news just recently the kind of outroar about the poor quality children's meals that are being provided by various companies through schools, and so much of that food is processed, is really lacking in fiber. And processed foods really weaken both the lung and the large intestine, which is one reason why we're seeing a lot of health problems in both these organs in modern society, much higher levels than in traditional societies who are eating more whole foods. So we want to have a whole grain breakfast, have some oat porridge or other grain porridge or wholemeal toast. We could also have soups for breakfast, sugar-free, whole earth, baked beans on toast, sardines on toast, and many other kind of using whole foods to make breakfast. The same for meals. In Macrobiotics, we're feel that eating plant-based, that doesn't mean necessarily being vegan, but eating plant-based is best. So we're eating whole grains, whole vegetables, good variety of different vegetables, beans, seeds, nuts, some fruits, etc., as well as possibly some fish or shellfish or seafood, soups, desserts, etc. This kind of diet is going to be strengthening for the lungs. And avoiding especially sugar, and we can make tons of really nice desserts without using refined sugar. Please go on our website, and you can download a whole nice kind of booklet about how to make desserts, alternative sweeteners, and some nice recipes. So definitely need to avoid sugar, processed foods, too much tea, coffee, alcohol, spices. Too many, especially tropical fruits, bananas, oranges, mangoes, etc. These have a more cooling effect on the body and not so great for the lungs. Also, on an emotional and life level, the lungs not only are exchanging gases with our environment, they also exchange, in Oriental medicine, they say also we're exchanging energy with other people. They're to do with our emotional intimacy with other people. If we're lacking contact with intimate contact with people, as unfortunately quite a lot of people are during lockdowns, this has a weakening effect on the lungs, and we may develop a dejected kind of posture and expression. And then we meet someone that we, who loves us. We're pleased to meet them. And we start taking deeper breaths again. We need nourishing relationships and also community. So if you're lacking social contacts, then please use Skype, internet, talk over the garden fence, whatever, to maintain your social contact, to strengthen your lung energy. So we've looked at some signs of weakness or imbalance in the lungs. We've looked at, briefly, ways of strengthening the lungs. There's a lot more detail I could go into. This is just a quick overview to really give you the flavor of how we can assess our health. These are the things that we learn in macrobiotics. We're learning on all our more in-depth courses. This is how we can be continuously improving our health. And our health is not a static thing. Everything changes all the time in nature and in the world and in the universe, including our health. So we can't just do one thing, one exercise regime, one diet, and expect to be healthy for all times. We need to have a flexible system to my lungs are becoming imbalanced. My liver's, my liver is less healthy. What do I do to help that particular organ now? We need these methods of health assessment, and then knowing how to help our different organs so that we keep improving our health. This is the way to avoid an awful lot of illness, and an awful lot of serious illness. And it's also the way to strengthen our immune system and to greatly reduce our chances of picking up on viral and bacterial airborne diseases. And if we do pick them up, to have a stronger immune system and a stronger body, so that we're going to get less serious symptoms. And the great thing about doing this over time is that, as I was saying at the beginning, really reducing the amount of fear that we feel, because one can feel that one has a more robust health. I haven't developed COVID-19 symptoms, so I don't know that I've had it. I've had various friends in their 60s and even 70s know that they've caught it and had a positive test, who have not had serious symptoms. They've had like a heavy cold or mild flu-like symptoms, which have lasted days or a few weeks. So it's not inevitable that people in their 60s and 70s, people at older ages, are going to develop the coronavirus very seriously. And everything we can do to strengthen our health is going to help reduce our chances of getting really serious symptoms from coronavirus. So if you want to learn more about these methods of Oriental diagnosis, we use them a lot in a lot of our courses. So our 5-day residential Looking After Your Health course, which we repeat 4 or 5 times a year. Next one due in March. I hope we're going to be able to run, if not that one, June, September, November, where we really help everyone. We have small groups here. We really help everybody to learn this Oriental health assessment and to recognize what imbalances they have and the positive steps they can take to improve their particular health. A lot of people have that course has really helped them turn around a lot of different health problems and get on a new path, a much healthier, happier path. As far as online courses, my 6 Steps to Wellbeing course, we're using methods of Oriental diagnosis. And if you really want to study this in depth, for the last 15 years, we've been running a foundation year-long course of about 30 days long, spread over 8-9 months, where we're studying Oriental diagnosis, nutrition, cooking, body work, emotional healing, and a real kind of holistic package to understand our health better, and to make positive changes. And if this really grabs you, after doing that foundation year, we run a 2-year professional training for people to become health coaches, really excellent cooks and cooking teachers, and also shiatsu body workers. So you can check all this out on the website. So I hope that this has given you some insight into how we can know if we're healthy. Really, we can, with using these Oriental methods of health assessment, they're so invaluable. This is one of the greatest gifts that we have from Oriental, Chinese, Japanese, etc. Traditional medicine. They've been developing this system for thousands of years, alongside the development of Western medicine in Europe, Middle East, etc. Over several thousand years, from the Greeks, Egyptians, etc. The Oriental medicine has been developing its particular approach, and these Oriental methods of health assessment are so valuable. Really wish that they would start being recognized more by Western medicine, because they're just so useful, and they would give much more information on the state of people's health, and would be invaluable at this time of having a pandemic. It would really encourage people to improve their health and really reduce the chances of developing serious COVID symptoms. So I hope this has been of interest to you. Would love to see you on one course or another, and if you have any questions, do get in touch with me.